everybody. Today I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm taking a quick break from my Christmas cards to work on some t-shirts. I am a member of our local P.E.O. chapter, and this week our chapter had a silent auction fundraiser, and the item I donated was a few of these cute P.E.O. Christmas t-shirts. If you don't know what P.E.O. is and you're interested, feel free to hit me up. It's a great women's organization. So I've got about 4 t-shirts to make, so let's start with the supplies you're gonna need. T-shirts, heat transfer vinyl, scissors, weeding hook, a heat press, silhouette machine. Okay, so first things first, you're gonna wanna wash your t-shirts. I like to use 100% cotton t-shirts. These are the Gildan ones. I just got them from Joann. So let's take the stickers off and throw them in the wash. Now that I have my shirts in the wash, we can start with cutting out the vinyl shapes that are gonna be ironed onto the shirts. So I'm gonna be using my computer hooked up to my Silhouette Cameo. I think this is the original version of it. I've had it for years and years and years. It's still working fine, so I haven't felt the need to upgrade, but there are nicer machines out there than this one if you're interested. All right, so let's go. So here is my shirt design. I've got this loaded into Silhouette Studio. I'm not gonna go too much into how to use this software. There's a lot of better videos out there on YouTube of people who are much more experienced at this software than I am. I kind of just mess around until it does what I want. So this design is actually 4 different layers, 1 for each color. We've got the white flowers, the gold stars, the red ribbon, and then the yellow centers of the flowers. And I have each of these layers measured out already to match what vinyl I have on hand. So let's just move forward with the cutting. I'm going to start with the white layer because it's the biggest one and it's going to take the longest. It's also the most complex shape. So I'm going to be cutting this out on heat transfer vinyl. So when you're doing heat transfer vinyl, you want to make sure you flip your shape backwards because you're going to be ironing it down, and that will reverse the shape on your shirt. So if you don't reverse it, it's going to be backwards. The next step is setting up our cutting mat. So let's get some of this stuff out of the way. What I'm going to be using is the 12 by 24 silhouette mat. I didn't list this in supplies because mine is old and nasty, not very sticky anymore, covered in threads and gunk. A nice new one would work a little better, but I'll show you how I get around it. So first of all, let's open up our vinyl. I'm going to be using the Cricut Everyday Iron-On. This is the only iron-on vinyl I've used so far. I think it's really easy to use, and I just haven't wanted to take the time to learn a new one. So let's get that open. So I'm going to be using the whole sheet. I need to cut out 4 of these designs, but only 3 will fit on one, so I'm going to do 3 today, and then I'll cut out another on an extra sheet of vinyl I have. And since my mat is not very sticky anymore, what I do is I grab some tape and I tape it around the edges just to make sure it doesn't peel up when it's cutting and my design gets all off track. So this sheet is going to take up the entire cutting mat, so I'll line it up on the edges printed on the mat. Press it down. It still sticks a little bit, but not enough that I trust it when it goes through the machine. So then I just take a piece of tape, tape it in each corner up at the top. And this is low tack tape, but it's sticky enough that it won't peel up when it feeds through the machine. And I'm going to roll it all the way out, pressing down as I go. I'm going to put a piece of tape on the sides. And then on the bottom as well. And when you're using the heat transfer vinyl, you put the shiny side down when you put it on your mat. Okay, 2 more pieces of tape and we'll be ready to go. And another benefit of this tape is it's very thin, so if the blade goes over an area where it's taped, it'll just cut right through it. Okay, so now that's ready to go into the machine. So we'll turn it around. This is the top. You can see there's an arrow somewhere on here, I think. Maybe not, but this is where the little hole is. So that's where the top is. Okay, well, pull the machine back. Open it up. Line it up with the guidelines in here. So there's a line right here to guide where the sheet needs to go. And then you slide it under the rollers, and then there's a button over here on the controls to load the cutting mat. And that's just a lovely, lovely sound. Back to the computer. All right, so I'm ready to send my design to the machine. So I've got it set for heat transfer smooth, which is the material I'm using. The Silhouette has built-in settings for this kind of material. I usually fiddle around with them because I have a hard time weeding my material with these settings. So I usually crank up the force a little bit, slow down the speed a little bit because I like it to get a nice deep cut. I know it's probably not good for my blades or my mat, but I don't use that this much, so I don't really mind if I'm putting a little extra wear and tear on them. And then the blade I set at 6. And then I match that setting with the blade in the machine. So then you go down. Oh, hold on. I'm unavailable. Let me try plugging this into a different port. There we go. So my computer's a little old, so one of my USB ports is better than the other. So now I'm ready to click send. Now it'll ask you if you want to send it mirrored. So if you haven't reversed your image already, you can do it now. I always reverse it ahead of time just so I know it works. So I'm going to send as is. Alright, we're done, so we'll unload it from the machine. And there we go. So I'm sure you can't see it on your screen, but you can. There are tiny little cut lines from where the blade cut out our design. So the next part is what we call weeding, which is removing all the material that isn't part of our design. So let's get to that. When you're weeding, you're going to want to get your little hook tool. I don't really know what this is called. I just call it the weeding tool. So it's got a sharp little hook on the end to help you pull out the pieces that you don't want in your design. So actually the first thing I'm going to do is find the edge of my design and cut off the vinyl that didn't get used so I can use it for another project. So let's see, it's about right here. And be careful not to cut any of your design. You're gonna be real mad at yourself, which I have done before. So I'm going to take one of my pieces of tape and stick this end back down. I find it a lot easier to do weeding when you've got your vinyl attached either to the cutting mat or taped down to your table, just so it doesn't curl up on you. I think that's especially helpful when you've got a big design like this. So let's see, I'll start with something small like the center of one of the daisies. So you just kind of gouge your hook end into it and pull, and there you go. Let's see. There's one of our corners of one of the daisies. And then once I get to a big area, I just kind of yank it off. That's why I like to make my cut lines nice and deep so that I can just pull without worrying too much about ripping a piece of my design. And while I'm sure this part is terribly interesting to you, I think I'll speed it up a little bit. So there is our finished weeded white design. And so this material is sticky on the back, so I usually just set it off to the side. I try not to get it stuck to too much stuff because that might get hairs or threads or whatever stuck underneath the design when we iron it on. So let's just get this out of the way and move on to the next step. So through the magic of the internet, the rest of our colors are all cut out. Red, gold, and yellow. Now let's get these weeded. Gold. There we go. All right, so let's clear off our area for the next step. For the next part of this project, we're going to be using some heat. So I've got my ironing mat out, and I think our t-shirts are probably dry now, so let's go take a look. The last part of this process is ironing the design onto our shirt, so let's grab one of them and I'll walk you through the process. For this part, I've laid down my ironing mat. This is a really handy tool, not just for crafting. Sometimes I iron small pieces of clothes on here. It's really nice to have around. Another important tool we're going to use for this part is the heat press. I have the Cricut one. I think this is the medium size, and it's plenty big for anything I want to do. So I've got this preheated, and the first thing I'm going to do is press this shirt just to make sure it doesn't have any wrinkles. And it's also good to preheat the shirt before you try to put your heat transfer vinyl on it. So let me get it straightened out. All right, and then it works just like an iron. Okay, so now our transfer area is nice and smooth. Now we want to layer our picture, and so I'm going to grab one of each of the shapes I cut out. So you want the red one, the gold one, and the white one. And I'm not actually going to do the yellow ones for the layering because they kind of just depend on where I set the white one. So that'll be easy to do later on. So if we look at the original design, we can see that the red layer is actually the bottom layer. So we're going to place that one first. Get that out of the way. I'm going to try and center it in the middle of the shirt. And since this is sticky, it's easy to place it and it will stay where you put it. Then I'm going to layer the white on top of it I'm really just eyeballing this to make sure it looks straight. That looks pretty good. And then I'll take my star, pop that on the top. We'll take off the top 2 layers. Save those for later, and we're gonna press the first layer. So you take the heat press, and you've got 2 settings here, temperature and time. And so I've got it set at 330 degrees for 30 seconds. So it'll do 30-second presses by the timer that starts when you press the little Cricut button. So you pressed it down, press your timer, and then the 30-second countdown starts. And then you pick it up and move it to the next spot. You can overlap a little, it's not gonna hurt it. And there you go. Then you flip the shirt over and you do the same thing on the back. I'm gonna just kind of run it over the whole thing for 30 seconds because I know I'm gonna get more heat on this from the other layers. There we go. All right, and so this should be attached. You need to let it cool down first before you try to peel it, otherwise it's gonna peel the vinyl off with the backer. All right, I think we can try peeling it now. It's starting to come up. If you're only doing 1 layer, you probably want to give it a little more heat than I did, but I know I'm going to go over this several times, so this will adhere just fine. Okay, so there's that layer. I'm going to hold on to that for the next step. So now I'll take my white, line it up on there as we did before, just kind of centering it, making sure it looks even. All right, and I think that looks pretty good. And I'm gonna throw this cover back on top of the red because there's a little bit that goes over where the plastic is for the white side, just so I don't melt the vinyl directly on the heat press. Okay. And then we do the same thing. And since you saw me do this already, I'll speed it up a little for you. So there's our white layer done. I gave it a little extra heat on the front just to make sure it all had adhered. So next we're gonna do our star and our yellow dots. Since they don't overlap at all, we can do them as 1 layer. And the yellow, it's actually super fiddly. I have very, very little yellow vinyl, so I don't cut them out as arranged on the thing. I just cut them out and then place them 1 by 1. So we're gonna make this real quick. So there they are all placed. We'll put these covers back on to cover up any overlapping vinyl. Okay. And then we'll press. And then you're done. So that's all there is to it. It takes a little practice to get used to it, but once you've done it a few times, you can get a pretty consistent result. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the next one.